Today I'm taking you on a journey in Currumbin Valley in Queensland on Bundjalung country. We'll be heading to Garima Conservation Reserve to learn about a rare little bird. Let's check it out. Eastern bristlebirds are shy and cryptic little creatures, living in the remaining dense coastal vegetation off the east coast of Australia. You've likely never seen one, but you may have heard their melodic song. There are only a small number of birds left in populations across Victoria, New South Wales and southern Queensland. These beautiful birds are most critically endangered in the southern Queensland and northern New South Wales area, with only an estimated 40 birds remaining in the wild in this region. Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary, in collaboration with the New South Wales Office of Environment and Heritage, are running a captive breeding program to increase the numbers of these little birds. New breeding enclosures have been built at Garima Conservation Reserve in Currumbin Valley with a plan to breed more birds and release them into the wild. Garima is a 27.5 hectare property that is home to many native plants and animals, and it is now an essential part of the effort to save the northern population of eastern bristlebirds. I'm on the Conservation Reserve today with Anthony from Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary to get an insight into the property and the protection of these birds. Anthony and I have just sat down to have a cup of tea and he's going to talk me through Garima. Yeah,
Garima Conservation is a very exciting property. As you can see here, with our network of tracks, we'll get out today and do a bit of exploring and show you what it's all about.
It's quite a big property, is that right?
Yeah, it's about 70 acres, 26 hectares in size. You can see it's quite long, looks quite flat on here, but there's quite hilly, several ridges, which works in our favour at times. And yeah, it's a pretty exciting property and it's very beautiful too.
Yeah, we've got an incredible landscape in front of us. What makes this property so special? Is there anything about it that makes it really important to the ecology around here?
I guess it's what's on it and what we plan to do with it in the future. And then we know there's a lot of plants on here, over 400 species of plants on here. We know there's threatened plants and also threatened species on here, animals as well. So our role is to preserve the land and the animals within it, and also do some what we call ex situ conservation programs that we do at Currumbin Sanctuary, but we're expanding those and bringing them out to Garima.
Maybe we can finish our cup of teas and then we can jump in a buggy and go explore?
Sounds like a good plan to me. We'll do a bit of walking, a bit of buggying, have a bit of fun.
Garima was previously privately owned, but has recently been gifted to the National Trust Queensland. The Trust is committed to preserving the rainforest, sharing it with the community and protecting it for future generations to enjoy. This is so spectacular. It feels like we're almost in a prehistoric land here. Can you tell me a bit more about Garima Conservation Reserve and the work you do here?
Yeah, Garima is a very special place. Because of the flora that's here and the animals that are here, it's a very important place to preserve, and that's what we want to do. We've taken possession of it about 12 months ago, so mid-2021, and our aim is to preserve this for longevity, for many generations to enjoy and come and visit.
And this is maybe a very broad question, but what's your connection to this land? Like, how do you personally feel about this place?
It's a special place, and there's some places you go, and I'm sure you travel around, you've seen it, where you go and you just feel happy. This is just a happy place. You come here, it's a really calming environment. There's so much to see. As you're seeing here, we've got this water just trickling underneath us here. There's rocky outcrops, there's a whole different types of landscapes, and you can find somewhere to just find your solace and get away and forget about the world for a moment. So that's special, but it's also the work we're doing. That's the other bit, you know, that's a personal thing. The conservation programs are critical, so I'm involved in overseeing our conservation programs, so that's where my involvement comes in at Garima here, making sure that we're managing the land and our conservation programs as best we can, so that all our animals have a bit of longevity into the future.
So this was initially a banana plantation and you've been restoring it back to its, I guess, pre-colonial nature.
Yeah, right? That's right. It wasn't all a banana plantation, but aspects of it were. And we'll have a look at some trees later where there's the big stumps of trees where they've been cut off, and timber getters came in. You can actually see the notches in the trees where they put their planks on, where they climbed to cut it by hand. And then those logs went pushed out, and probably by bullocks, taken out to a sawmill not far from here in the Cougar National Park, which is now defunct. But that was set up in 1943, and the timber from this property went down to that sawmill to be cut up and to make the banana crates for bananas during the war. So quite a fascinating link with the trees, the bananas and the plantation, and where we are now in this amazing property.
And quite a shift in the way the whole region is being managed, right? So it's gone from production to more understanding the significance of the land and a bit more sort of a tourism focus as well. Yeah,
absolutely it is. And I think that's, tourism is getting more environmentally aware, and people want to get out and do good things. So, like everything in life, everything evolves. This is a really good evolution, and that's why we're excited to be working on this property, to continue to involve it and manage the land in a sustainable way. We work quite closely with the Yugambeh language mob. So Garima actually means, it's a Yugambeh word that means to care for, to look after. So we liaise and consult with them quite regularly. Soon we'll be developing a yarning circle out here, and that's where we can bring people, we can bring corporates or schools and bring them into that space. And basically that's a space where you come and everyone is one and everyone is equal. And you have a nice conversation about anything you want in life, and then the idea is then you leave that space knowing that we're all equal and all one. It's a beautiful concept, a beautiful message, and that's what we want to get across with this property, that it's here for sharing, it's land for everyone, and if we share and care for it together, the world will be in a better place.
I love this philosophy. Should we go check out some birds?
I would love to show you our bristlebirds.
It's bristlebird feeding time, which means we get to head into the enclosure and hopefully see some of these rare little creatures. This is an important part of their routine, as it allows the conservation team to see the birds and check that they are all healthy and well. We have to be very quiet while in the enclosure, as the birds scare easily.
There's some bristlebirds calling. That's bristlebird calling.
Oh.
That's one of their many calls. They've got many different calls.
Are they coming from outside the aviaries?
No, so they've got 5 of these aviaries all up. They're just a bit further up.
Oh.
He's having a little
chat.
Having a little chat.
What do you think they're saying?
Come and film me.
Come and film me. Film me and feed me some crickets and some mealyworms. Oh, it smells beautiful.
Yeah. You see that?
Yeah.
Now, they're quite a shy bird. So normally where they're found down south, they're in heathland, but up here they're in grassland. And they're quite shy. So you often see them just darting out between the grasses. There's one just over here at the moment.
Oh, hi.
This is part of the patience of bird watching, even though this is captive. There's one just here.
Oh, they're so sweet. Mm-hmm. So what's the personality of these birds?
They're naturally shy, inquisitive but shy, so you'll often see them perched up on top of a shrub or a low tree, but that's usually where they call from. Generally they're down low. They're more of a ground-dwelling bird, moving in amongst the foliage, and that's to obviously to protect them. The reason why we've got this captive breeding program is because the Eastern Bristlebird basically is found in 3 main populations, what we call southern, central and northern. Southern population is in Victoria, and there's actually just been a translocation from New South Wales to Victoria for a new population. The central population centres around a couple of locations in New South Wales, and the northern population, and that's what we've got here, it's on the New South Wales-Queensland border. There's only about 40 of those birds left.
There's only 40 of these birds left?
40. So this population is listed as critically endangered. And that's why it's so important that we have this breeding program, because without it, these birds could quite easily go extinct. And obviously we don't want that to happen. So we're hoping towards the end of this year to actually release some birds to the wild, and that's what this captive program has always been about. So we got some New South Wales state government and Australian government funding for this program to build these aviaries and manage them. We're very fortunate to get that, and that has enabled us to double our breeding capacity for these birds. Whereas 12 months ago, our aim was to do releases. We weren't talking about releases to the wild, but now we've been able to get these extra 5 enclosures. Now hopefully we'll be doing a release to the wild at the end of this year. We'll have transmitters on them. We'll be able to track them and monitor them and see how they go. So we are extremely excited about that, because that's what the whole program's about, and that's the evolution of it. You know, you can do conservation, but you need to have outcomes, and that's what that money's allowed us to do, and hopefully we can have a positive outcome. We've got a lot of private landholders engaged with us as well, so they're going to help us, you know, manage these bristlebirds on their land. So I certainly don't want any animals going extinct on my watch, so our plan is to ensure that this northern population doesn't go extinct.
Incredible. So is one of the reasons they're so critically endangered because they're land dwellers, and because the land has been cleared and their natural habitat has been sort of compromised? Yeah,
so the two big things is land clearing, and feral animals, particularly cats, have a devastating effect on our native wildlife. And because they're ground dwellers, once the habitat gets destroyed or burnt, that habitat's gone. And because they have quite specific habitat, once the habitat's gone, there's nowhere for them to go. And because they do sit up and sing on the top of branches, and they've got a beautiful call, which we heard earlier, that alerts, you know, foxes and cats to the presence of them. And because they nest in grassy tussocks, the chicks and their eggs can be predated upon quite easily. So that's part of the reason why we need to make sure that we look after them and give them every help they can get.
Yeah, we can help them with some mealyworms and some crickets in the meantime.
Yep, that's right. That's a good part of their tucker, and that's also part of this scatter feed. Is it makes them forage naturally, so it's getting them ready for the wild.
While the Breed to Release program for the southern Queensland and northern New South Wales population of the Eastern Bristlebirds is still in its early stages, a release project has just begun in Victoria. After the 2020 bushfires, the Victorian population of Eastern Bristlebirds was nearly lost. There are now less than 200 birds in the wild. Parks Victoria and the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning are leading a response and recovery program and have just undergone a wild-to-wild translocation of the birds from Jervis Bay in New South Wales to Wilsons Prom in Victoria. I've gone to meet Bo down in Victoria to learn more.
Bo, can you talk to me a bit about the genetic diversity and what you're working towards here?
Yeah, so I guess part of this project is that the Victorian population is what we call genetically depauperate. So its population is so low, it just doesn't have the diversity to be a fit population. So part of the project is looking at improving the genetic resilience of this population. So we're doing that by bringing birds from New South Wales subpopulation, which is a separate genetics, and then bringing Victorian birds into this new population. So we'll actually have a mix of both, which will, in the long term, really help the Victorian population.
So when you're talking about this kind of resilience, is it something like if there's a disease or something that affects the population, then if there's more genetic diversity, they're more likely to sort of overcome that as an issue? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so I guess like the less diversity they have in the genetics, the more risk there is that if there is an event, they won't be able to overcome that.
The relocated birds travelled 10 hours by road from Jervis Bay to the Prom, and I'm curious to learn how that went.
I love how much of a feat this would be for, you know, any humans or any animals, but let alone the Eastern Bristlebird that's quite small and shy and has a lot of special needs. What's the process like of transporting them?
They really didn't show any ill effect at all. So we had specially designed boxes, and we also had cars that were decked out. So blacked out the windows, no talking, the temperature down. So the drivers, they had to wear like ski jackets and gloves and really rug up, and it was a little bit of a worry. We just weren't sure, and it was just great when we opened up those boxes and saw them fly out. They were just happy as Larry, and we made sure we had some wildlife vets at the release point that would check the birds before we released them, and 100% survival through the trip, which was fantastic.
Congratulations. So that was the first part of the process. The next one was then releasing the birds out, and you did that relatively recently, is that right?
Yeah, so I guess it's like a wild-to-wild transfer, so it's the timing is really important. So we actually had to catch the birds in the afternoon, so they'd had a feed in the morning, so they weren't travelling on an empty valley, and they were basically held overnight. So the drivers drove overnight, and then at sunrise we would release the birds into their new habitat.
So how's it gone?
So it's gone really well so far actually. Yeah, we're really amazed with the success. So they're settling into their new home. So I guess the way we can tell that, initially the birds had a little radio transmitter attached to them, and we spent the first 100 days after release kind of following these birds around and just making sure, well, one, that they survived, two, we wanted to know like where they went. So we kind of we mapped the habitat in a fine scale, so we knew exactly like the quality of the habitat and what was what in the vegetation, and then we're able to get bearings on those birds. So it's like a TV antenna, like when the old school before digital, tuning it in, it gives you a direction. So the little transmitter would put out a ping, and it would be loudest to the direction the bird was, and then we could get a bearing. And we would do that from 3 different points simultaneously, and then triangulate and get a position of where the bird was. And that way, each day we could see where they were moving, and if they'd stopped moving, if they died, which they didn't. But yeah, so that was the first phase, I guess, of the monitoring, and the batteries went flat at about 100 days.
Yep.
And we got some really good data off that, and they've really stayed within the habitat that we thought they would. We did a lot of assessments around what would be suitable habitat, whether they would be confident that they'd thrive there. And then just last week we went and did what we call playback monitoring. So now they don't have the transmitters. There's a couple of things you can do. You can just go and listen for them. They have a really distinctive call, but also you can actively play a call, and the birds will play back their call to you.
So a bit of a call and response.
Yeah. And so we just have finished that, and yeah, we're really, really happy that the birds are still there and they're calling back and they're pairing up. So it's coming to breeding season now, and that's when it's the best chance for us to do that monitoring. And yeah, so they're hopefully going to be breeding this spring, which will be amazing.
Wilsons Prom was one of 8 selected sites for the release project, but sadly the other 7 sites burnt in the bushfires. The Prom is easier to protect against fires, making it an ideal site for the relocation.
The birds are really specific to their requirements. They like this coastal heathland, so the Prom has vast expanses of that. Also, it's well managed, so you've got a team there that are doing a lot of feral animal control and habitat maintenance and controlling how they do the fire. Fire frequency is really important with bristlebirds as well. I guess it's a little bit of a buffer for climate change, so it's more southern than where the Victorian population is now. So as temperatures increase, that brings some resilience into the population.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that the environment is being regenerated by the fire at some stage, but you also need to create enough scrubland so that the birds can survive, because they're ground-dwelling birds, right?
Yeah, that's right. They can fly, but you almost call them flightless. They only really they hop around. They actually use their legs more than their wings, and they just hop between the branches, and they're so cryptic, and that's why that heathland suits them so well. So their nests are really low to the ground. They're like less than a metre, which is vulnerable to things like foxes. I guess that is really important, having that frequency of fire and different age classes of burn. And the Prom Sanctuary project, it's a great opportunity for not only bristlebirds but for other endangered species to have a safe haven. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. Bo, thank you so much for meeting with me today, and congratulations again on a very successful release.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
The Eastern Bristlebird is critically endangered. And it seems easy to overlook the significance of this small, shy bird. But once it's gone, it's gone. And with it goes the delicate balance of this ecosystem. And that's what makes this such an important program. My name is Bridie Shepherd. Thanks for watching The Eco Show.